You can really thrive off the right investment.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner Sharon Sutton.
This week's Island Influencer is Katie Nicholson, who's director and co-founder of Founded Limited. Katie was born on the island, but she spent her early childhood years in Cyprus. Her family circumstances changed, so she returned to the Isle of Man when she was 9 years old. Katie has over 12 years of professional business development, marketing and management experience gained from working in digital and early-stage investment industries. In 2019, using her wealth of experience, Katie decided to go it alone, and then COVID-19 hit. Nevertheless, her enthusiasm, dedication and drive has kept her going, and she set up Founded. Katie and her closely integrated team help pave the way for a new generation of startup founders with information, inspiration and opportunity to start, grow or sustain big ventures. She's an enthusiastic, dedicated and driven self-starter. Founded provides general business consultancy, finance, marketing, mentoring, and fundraising services. They also host regular events to bring our communities closer, bringing a platform for startups, scale-ups, and investors to connect on common ground. Here's this week's conversation with Katie Nicholson in episode 52 of Island Influencers. Welcome to Island Influencers, Katie Nicholson. It's great to have you here, and thank you for sending in all your information and giving me a lot of background to have a really interesting conversation today. So let's get started. Could you tell listeners how you're here today, what your life story so far has been? Because I noticed there's been a few interesting things along the way.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I was actually born in the Isle of Man in 1987, giving my age away.
Yeah.
And I was here till I was 10 days old. And then my parents were actually living in Cyprus at the time.
Gosh.
But my mum had a house to sell and some of the bits and pieces to wrap up here. So, and also back then wasn't quite sure about the passport situation in Cyprus. So went straight back to Cyprus where I lived until I was 9. And then moved, had a great childhood there.
Yeah, I bet. What was that like growing up?
Good.
What do you remember?
School was from 8 till 1.
Yeah.
And then afternoons were just filled with clubs, football clubs, going to the beach. There was the school I went to, there was 35 nationalities. Oh. It was a Scottish couple that owned the school and they were very strict. And I just remember it being surrounded by so many different people from so many different cultures, backgrounds, and very family orientated. I think because I didn't realize it at the time, but a lot of the parents probably traveled quite a lot. So the mums that were left were kind of all together, doing things very community. And I grew up with Lebanese friends, Iraqi friends, Greek friends, Russian friends, German friends.
Fabulous. Was English the first language spoken or?
Yes, it was an English international school. Yeah. And if you had one Greek parent, which I do, you had to learn Greek. You were kind of made to do the Greek lessons. But me and a couple of my friends who also had English mothers were, shall we say, not the best because we didn't speak Greek in the house.
Right, okay.
So it was challenging, but it was really, when I look back, it was a fantastic start to my early years.
Great. So do you speak Greek?
Yeah,
today?
So I'm perfectly good at understanding and reading, but my grammar's not great and my vocab's not great. So the basics are fine.
Well, it's good to get by, isn't it? Well done. It's more than a lot of people can say. We just speak English,
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So what happened then when you were 9 years old, you moved back to the Isle of Man, presumably?
Yeah, so my parents divorced and my mum... and my brother would have had to go in the Cyprus army. I think they signed them up about 13.
National service.
Yeah, so when they finish school, they're straight in there for 2 years.
So this is the north of Cyprus, was it?
No, the south, the Greek side.
Okay.
So I think my mum always had in the back of her mind that she would maybe look for a move at that point. So that timing probably worked quite well. My grandma at the time wasn't well, was over here in a care home, and mum really wanted to get back to be close to her. So we moved back in the summer of, I want to say 1998. And I think the transition was quite smooth from what I remember.
Yeah. It's amazing what you block out as a 9-year-old.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because the Isle of Man, my mum had spent some time on and off here when she was younger. So she still knew a few people, which I guess is the benefit of the Isle of Man community. So we were able to meet a couple of the children before we went to school, like the week before. They we had lunch together, that kind of thing. So that helped.
So you went to Buchan?
So I went to Buchan for 1 year, Form 4, which was good, and then on to King William's College.
Great. I do that with my son. He's so you meet all the people in the Buchan that you're going to go to school with. And
it was really nice, actually. I don't remember, but I think maybe I'm quite adaptable. I just kind of went straight in, and it was small numbers, small classes, and it was good.
Yeah. And so you went to college, and you did the IB, presumably?
Yeah, so I was the first year that did the 2 whole years of the International Baccalaureate. So,
oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it was fun times. So the year above me, they did the first exams while we just finished lower 6. So it was really interesting. It was challenging for me because I'm not naturally gifted with maths and science, shall we say. And I probably, if I was doing A-levels, would have stuck to the more English, history, PE, maybe that kind of side of things.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I'm really glad I did it because it kind of just gave me that more all-rounded viewpoint on things, and some of the extracurricular activities that I remember running across a field with a gun and army uniform.
Right.
Yeah, CCF days. But very interesting. And it was very good to be able to go to school with, at that point, there was quite a lot of Germans. I think there still is coming over for the IB. So that was really good.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, before that, I guess kids in my year would have gone off to places like Atlantic College to do IB, but now that it's offered there, no, that's good. No, thanks for sharing that. So what happened then? You went off to university, to not John Moores, you went to Leeds Beckett University.
Yeah, so I went there. To be honest, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I'd applied for a few different courses. In hindsight, probably should have taken a gap year, but it wasn't really the done thing at that point, especially, dare I say it, for children from King William's College. It just wasn't really so much of an option. And so I ended up going through clearing because I got a place at Nottingham to do, I wanted to be a dietitian originally, and I'm very far away from where I am now. And I got a place at Nottingham to do nutrition. And then when we went to the open day, my mum and I, it was very like science based rather than the psychology side, which I enjoyed. So I ended up pulling out and going through clearing, and I'd done some work experience in the ShopRite office basically. And so I thought, I knew I wanted to go to Leeds. And so I saw a course that came up in sales management. So I went for that. It wasn't great. It was the people on the course were all very local, and they lived in Bradford, and it made it very difficult for me to kind of make any friends or to fit in. They kind of commuted. They weren't in halls there.
Oh, okay.
So I ended up, and I think I was quite homesick really. I ended up pulling out after the first year and starting again in year 2 on a retail marketing management course, which was much better and much more suited. And the people on the course were kind of all in halls and that kind of thing. And it was almost like a reset.
So a better community feel for the course.
Yeah. And I enjoyed it a lot more as well. Yeah. So I was there until 2009.
Right.
And then it was recession, applying for hundreds and hundreds of graduate roles in the UK. And I really wanted to go to London. That's where I really wanted to be. But
of course,
reality set in that really I wasn't financially, and I would have still had to rely on my mum to help me a bit with rent and that kind of thing. And it just wasn't feasible. So I ended up coming back to the Isle of Man because at the time, the Isle of Man government were doing a scheme through Employed.im for max graduates, where they would pay for you to do an MBA if you got a placement with a local employer.
Yeah.
So I came back. I did some temping work at Barclays. Everyone's done their stint at Barclays, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
And then I was lucky enough to get a job at PDMS as part of that scheme. So I then worked as a marketing executive there while studying my MBA. So I'd go to Isle of Man College, not Isle of Man College, sorry, it was the Isle of Man Business School at that time.
Yeah, was that the nunnery?
Yeah, at the nunnery. And it was through Liverpool, John Moores. And we'd go every Friday. There was only 4 of us in the class, all 4 girls. The government paid for the whole thing. And it was great. And we'd do the odd weekend, and at weekends we'd have some exec MBA people joining us. So people who were a bit older than us that were already in industry. So it was quite good to learn from them.
Yeah, actual experienced people.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm so grateful that I did that. At the time, I didn't think I'd want to study again. If you go on to do an MBA somewhere, it can cost, 20k. And it was never something that would have been on my radar. But by the Isle of Man government offering that scheme, it was really...
Oh, super.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've all stayed here, the 4 girls that were on the course. So it's kind of worked in that respect.
Yeah, that's kind of proof that the experiment that they ran, I guess, it worked.
Yeah.
Note to future future administrations. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. So what happened then after you did your MBA?
So I had 3 great years at PDMS, and then I decided to have a bit of a change, really. I had a bit more experience and I wanted to see what was out there. And someone that I had gone to school with, one of their sisters worked at Paddy Power, and there was a job that came up there. So it was quite daunting because I didn't really know much about the gaming industry or that sector of advertising that I ended up working in. Yeah. But I got the job and joined the team. There was about 16 of us in the office over here. Yeah. And all in one open plan office. And then the bulk of our team were all based in Dublin. So it gave me the chance to travel quite a lot. I was going over
I remember those days.
to Dublin and London every month, which kind of helped scratch that itch of wanting to live in London.
Yeah, sure, of course.
And there was a point where I did consider moving to Dublin as well, but in terms of the cost of living over there versus the salary and that kind of thing, it just didn't make sense at the time.
Yeah, you went in 2014 to Paddy Power. That was when the World Cup was on. So you had a role to play in that, I guess?
Yeah. So I remember on my first day, I literally got there and the manager that I was reporting into, she told me that she was actually pregnant and she'd be leaving in 3 months.
Right.
And this was a whole new industry. Her manager was also on maternity and the rest of the team were in Dublin. So it was a whole new industry. I didn't have a clue what was happening. And it was kind of a very fast learning experience because Paddy Power, huge opportunity, the World Cup. Yeah. I was working in customer acquisition. The whole, all it was about was getting new customers through the door. So it was very daunting, but actually probably the best thing that happened because I was thrown in at the deep end. I remember we had to go to Italy. The whole team from Dublin went to Italy to present the plans that we had to the Italian vertical of Paddy Power in Rome. And it was kind of get on a plane at 6 a.m. in Dublin, spend the whole day in the office, all of us presenting our plans. And I'd not really presented much. I was kind of just so like massive imposter syndrome, I guess, because some of the other people that were doing it were more experienced than me. But it went okay. And then we were back on the plane the next morning to Dublin and it was all kind of, oh, whoa, that's happened. But really great experience and really fantastic to work with so many, talented people as well.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. You should be very proud of yourself.
I learned a lot of footballers' names.
It's going to be one aspect to it, I suppose. Yeah. Great. So you worked with some big companies there, by the looks of it.
Yeah. So we had the opportunity to work with people like Google and Facebook and go to their offices in London, which obviously, again, very inspiring and very, as someone from the Isle of Man, a great opportunity to just see the reality of what it's like working in those places and just see what's out there in the world.
Yeah. It's a bigger place than just this 36 by 12 that we live on. Yeah. And of course, so you stayed with Paddy Power and then you went off to KPMG, didn't you?
Yep. So Paddy Power, it was quite fortunate timing because I was at that crossroads of potentially moving to Dublin to progress or stay here. And a role came up at KPMG for marketing. And I knew that they did the gaming summit and that kind of thing. So I thought, it ties in and it gives me potentially another string to my bow. It turns out that the girl that was already there at the time that had left wanted to come back. So that didn't quite work out. But they said to me, we've got this opportunity coming up. We're working on with Appleby and Continent 8. And so they wanted to launch an angel network. It was 2016. The Isle of Man government they just launched the £50 million enterprise development scheme fund. And really, they'd noticed that there wasn't an angel network to support that activity. And they'd been working closely with Northern Ireland and London to see what they do. So they thought, let's start one. So again, right place, right time, really.
Yeah. So what made you decide to stay versus having had your eyes opened, going to the likes of Google and Facebook, not to go to Dublin? Yeah,
I think a couple of things. I think probably the cost of living in Dublin, and I think the Isle of Man office I had the best of both worlds. I got to work in a really small office and a really small team, but travel backwards and forwards, and it was maybe slightly less pressure in some ways than being there full time and the reality of it. And also I really enjoyed it, but you start to question with gambling and all that kind of stuff.
And sure.
Sometimes you just think, maybe let's look at another opportunity.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. So KPMG, you did this angel network, and that lasted until July 2019.
Yeah.
And then another change. What happened there?
Yeah, so it was going really well, and we had all these plans and we wanted to do all these things, but unfortunately some of the regulations on the Isle of Man didn't quite fit exactly in the same way as the UK. So in terms of like angel syndicates and investing. And
so financial services regulation as much as anything.
Yeah. So we ended up deciding to kind of bring Bridge to a close, which was sad at the time, but I think the best decision for everyone. There was a lot of sponsors involved and it was getting quite challenging to give everyone, to move forward. We had great ambitions, and rather than just standing still, that was the best thing. So that finished in, I think, June 2019, if I can remember. Mm-hmm. And I decided to have a couple of months to just regroup and see what was out there.
Yeah.
Had quite a few conversations with people. Wasn't quite sure. I'd had quite a lot of independence when I was at Bridge, because essentially I was the only employee. So whilst it was stressful, it was a great learning experience.
Yeah.
And so I decided to, after a lot of support from, I guess, my mum and encouragement like that, decided to just go out on my own. And really was quite fortunate because I got approached by a company and they asked me to do 3 days a week consulting, which meant that I knew my mortgage was covered and that kind of thing. So it kind of made that jump a lot easier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I ended up doing 3 days a week for a financial services company, and then 2 days with Locate Isle of Man, so helping them to attract high net worth and entrepreneurs to the Isle of Man. So it was probably a great year or so. I probably didn't really get stuck into that until the October, November 2019.
Yeah, okay. So you'd worked with Nick Presky, who, funny enough, was a guest very recently on the podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, he's a great guy. We'd actually done some things together when I was at Bridge, because DFE were a great supporter of Bridge. So we went to quite a few conferences, and he was always very helpful in terms of access to government and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working with Nick. We had this huge calendar planned out of events. We were hosting people. We were bringing people over. We were really trying to kind of get the Isle of Man message out there.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Big time.
Yeah. So I was left in this position where I was actually in the UK at the time. It was about, I think, the 20-something of March. I'd just been taken by a client to the Liverpool Atletico Madrid game that was kind of then in the news as shouldn't have been going ahead. Came back to the Isle of Man and was told that the 3 days a week contract that I was on was kind of ending, because all consultants in that company were being frozen, essentially, because everyone was panicked. No one knew what was happening. Everyone had to protect their budgets and that kind of thing. And the work with Locate obviously dried up, because that was all based
on people moving here, which ironically seems to have taken off since.
And also on us travelling to the UK to actually do those events and stuff. So I was kind of left overnight.
Gee, thanks, guys.
Thinking, oh no, what have I done? I was lucky because of the way I'd invoiced and that kind of thing. I had a couple of months, because I was basically having money coming in probably until the April, May time. So it was that kind of panic of, not only what do I do now, but sitting at home during lockdown with the prospect of not having anything to do as well. And whilst it's a novelty for a couple of weeks, I just think for mental health, like for me personally, I need to have something to focus on.
Yeah. A sense of purpose.
Yeah. Exactly. And luckily, a friend of mine and someone that I'd worked with before, Alex Wilson, we'd already set up Startup Grind on the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
And that really for us, we'd actually been in San Francisco in February, which was an amazing opportunity for us. We went to the global conference there.
So it's like a franchise, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's an events brand, essentially. They were founded in Silicon Valley 10 years ago by a guy called Derek Anderson, who essentially he had his own startup and he wanted to bring people together. And he always talks about the first event he did and only 5 people showed up, and then they persevered with it. And they thought, okay, we could maybe just do this in Silicon Valley. And then people said, oh, I want to do this in Barcelona. I want to do this in New York. And they ended up branching out. And over, that 10 years, it's now grown to 600 cities. So they did amazing things to really pivot overnight and create an online platform. When we started off with Zoom, and then they have a sister company called Bevy. So they allowed everyone to use that for free to host events. So it kind of helped me have a new focus, because Alex and I started running events locally online, things like how to protect your business from COVID and that kind of thing, which really gave me that opportunity to also, with Startup Grind, to tap in. I could then join all the events in every other chapter. So I was logging on at 11 p.m. to the Boston.
Yeah, it's good that, isn't it?
Yeah, the Boston chapter, and learning stuff and learning from people that I would never have had that opportunity to learn from.
Yeah.
I'd have to travel there.
Yeah.
So it worked out well in the end.
Yeah, it's actually an outcome of COVID that has driven many positives, not just the negatives, and the global communication across lots of different places, like you say. It's just such opportunities. Well done. So what happened with the Startup Grind? Did I read on LinkedIn you became a director?
Yeah, so we are essentially, everyone that has their own chapter are directors of that chapter. That's kind of how they brand it. So Alex and I are both directors of the Isle of Man chapter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we had to go through a process to apply for that. And then we did an 8-week, we did an interview, and then we had an 8-week training course that we went on, just to ensure that the brand consistency and the messaging and how you're doing it is right, really, and keep that consistency. Yes. So we've been doing that since we had our first event in November 2019, and we'd done 2 in-person events before we ended up having to go online. Yeah. And so, I got involved this year in the global conference, which ended up being online, which was obviously a shame because we loved going to San Francisco. Yeah. But I helped backstage with hosting some of the pitch events that they did, and gave a quick presentation on how we've leveraged our network on the Isle of Man to build that chapter. And
the imposter thing gone, has it?
I don't think it ever goes, really. I think you just kind of, each thing you go through, you think, okay, I got through that. I can do this thing. And Alex is really great to work with. So her skills really complement mine, I think. So I think that's really important, in having someone that, as I put it in my presentation, that you can kind of thrive together through things.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So then you've also Petra Consulting, that's same sort of...
So that was my company that I set up originally to do my consultancy through
DFE.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I noticed that you joined the Digital Isle of Man Executive Agency back in 2018. So you've been doing that for a number of years.
Yes.
So is that voluntary role?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So it's just actually coming up we've done our first 3-year term. Again, that was one of those things where I thought, whoa, like this is such a great thing to be involved in. At the time, quite a bit younger. And at first, I guess maybe that imposter thing, you think, is this a diversity play? And I've openly said that to a lot of people, because a lot of the people on the board, it's changing now, but at the start it was the well-known faces, the older men in suits. But it's equally been great to work with them and learn from them.
I am from financial services. I get it. Completely get it.
So we're just actually renewing they've just gone out for expression of interest, and I think they closed last week. So I've indicated that I'd be happy to do another
Fantastic.
term. Yeah.
I should think so.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I think it's a great. It's one of the sectors that have actually fared very well.
It was the first chair. Who was the first chair?
Lydia Barbara.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Was Richard Arning on that too?
He was indeed.
Yeah. Before he sadly went off to.
Yeah. So Richard, and then Lydia, and then Kurt Reason was also involved.
Right. Okay. So your future at the moment, you're working in the startup.
Yeah. So
Grind.
Along with Alex, we decided that there was more to do around Startup Grind's very events focused, and John Garland, who I used to work with at DFE.
Oh yes, I know John.
He was a big supporter of Bridge as well when he was at DFE. So John, Alex, and I founded. So we're 3 directors on that. So that is really a startup consultancy services company.
Yeah, and it's doing well.
Yeah, we're doing well. We've all got our own. I mean, Alex has a full-time job. John's got Paula's Kitchen. We've all got our own, businesses on the side. So we kind of took a bit of time over COVID to see what we really wanted to do and what services would really be needed. But we decided to relaunch the Angel Network. So we had our first online event last month, and we're doing another one in July. And we found that actually by going online, that's been a real opportunity for us.
I'm seeing you quite a lot on Instagram for things like that.
That's Alex's great marketing skills.
Well, yes, she obviously knows how it works. I don't. But moving on to questions I ask all my guests. I mean, my day job is not a broadcaster at all. I'm a financial planner, and I often ask people when I first meet them in a sort of meeting when they come to see me professionally is, well, how was money for you growing up? It sounds like your story is one of growing up in a different country. I wonder what your earliest memory of money is.
Yeah, to be honest, in Cyprus, I don't have much memory of it really being like when I was trying to think what is my first memory. Yeah. I think that I remember, I don't really remember it being a thing until I came back to the Isle of Man, really. And my mum at that point was a single parent. And so things were a bit more challenging. And one of the things was, I laugh about it now, but actually if I was in her shoes, it probably would have been quite stressful. When I first started at high school, 3-way calling was a big thing. And we would all be on the phones all the time, and you'd be, I guess now the equivalent of a FaceTime group call.
Which is free.
Yeah. And we're just on the phone all the time. And at that point, my mum was doing a couple of different jobs, and she had both my brother and I to support financially. And I remember one time she used to kind of go mad in the holidays. And one time she went out and she literally took the router, all the phones in the house, and the Sky card with her as a punishment, which was just at the time. I mean, we weren't even that focused on tech back then, but it was horrific. But then I remember, to on the serious side of it, her actually sitting down and showing me the phone bill and showing me what her income was for the month. And I think that was quite a poignant moment for me. It's that reality, isn't it? Of you don't really consider. And I think it also plays into people now that you can live in a nice house and, on the outside, people don't really know what's going on, do they? And there's a lot of people that live on credit, and there's I was always told never put things on credit. And if you wanted to buy one thing and pay it off each month rather than living a life where everything's on credit. Because again, going back to COVID, that's where I think people have struggled, because not only do they not have work, but they've got income.
Still got expenditure. Still got to pay stuff. Got to pay the cost of life. Cost of living.
So I think that kind of a set-up moment. And also I was probably surrounded by people that were very fortunate at school. Yeah. So that plays into a lot, because you kind of get stuck in this thing of it's aspirational, I guess, isn't it? Your mum could have sent you to Balakameen or all good schools, but could have chosen not to pay for your education. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of debate around that as well. But I think that what I would say from my class at KWC was a lot of the parents there were just 2 parents working very hard and making other sacrifices to educate their children. There's always going to be wealthy people in society, but I think that there was a lot of people don't necessarily think about that. But perception is reality, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, okay, thank you. And so of all the things you've done so far, what's given you the most fulfillment? Gosh, I don't know. I think probably starting my own business. It's been really challenging, But I think it's actually everything that's kind of got to this point has helped me along the way. So the experience I've had in all the other jobs, and then working with entrepreneurs at Bridge, and understanding how to set up a company and that kind of thing, I think has been, whilst it's been challenging because of what's been going on, it's also provided me different opportunities. I think, like, my dad isn't very well, so I've been able to, last year I was able to go to Cyprus for an extended period of time, and you think, oh, I can just work remotely, whereas if I was with an employer, I might be looking at 23 days holiday and thinking, how am I going to make this work, or getting pulled in different directions. So I think whilst it's sometimes difficult because I'm not necessarily always earning what I could have been or what I would have been, there's always that potential to, take on more work and that kind of thing.
Oh, great. This has got to be your key area, this has. This question. If anybody, I was going to ask this question too, it'd be you. Okay, so what's your number one business tip for any aspiring entrepreneur?
Only one. Or
existing business. Well, go on.
Yeah, I think that
you can have more than one.
It's definitely trust your gut and be very considerate about who you potentially go into business with, who you potentially get investment from. You can really thrive off the right investment and the right partner. Equally, it can become very challenging, and if you find the wrong partner, you could end up losing it all. But on a more positive note, I think really people, like, look after your people, listen to your people, your team, because ultimately they're the ones that will potentially make sacrifices with you, because if they believe in your business or your product and they're bought into that, then as a founder, what more could you ask for, really?
No, indeed. That's a really great tip. Thank you. And what do you do to relax and keep your life in balance, Katie?
I play hockey for Castown Hockey Club.
Oh, cool.
On a Saturday. I didn't play for about 10 years after leaving school, but when I came back, a friend of mine said she played for Castown. Very friendly club. And I love it because I love the fact that it's a real mix of people. So
got lots of juniors in there.
Yeah, lots of juniors, also people up to age 60, 65.
Yeah.
And it's just really nice, having been kind of in the business sector, to play with people who are, from all walks of life. And it just really kind of, you get to switch off. And
cool.
Yeah. And reading, I've got a lot more into reading during the lockdown. So just having that more.
What sort? Well, you'll give me a name of a book. Well, we can do the book now if you like. What's
all kinds of things. I read How I Disrupted an Industry by Anne Bowden recently, who's the founder of Starling Bank.
Okay.
She started that in her 60s, and just through so much tenacity. And so that was a really interesting one. And then another one, which I'm still reading at the moment, quite not controversial, but I think something that people don't talk about, is called The Panic Years. And it's basically aimed at women 28 to 40, and all about how everything that happens during those years, career, whether you want to have children, who you live with, if you buy a house, where you invest, all that
sounds
kind of
a great
stuff.
book, actually.
Yeah, so I'm only halfway through, but it's good to kind of get that conversation going.
Well, there's no rush, by the way. I was nearly 41 when I had Luke, so
that's good to know.
Oh, okay. So tell me, what do you think are the best things about living on the Isle of Man?
Community. The fact that I think, we've seen that, haven't we, through COVID, all the things that people do to come together and support each other. Pre-COVID, I would say that it was kind of accessibility. I know we all complained about the EasyJet queue at the airport and that kind of thing, but in reality, you could be in the UK and, in the Northwest in 25 minutes, and in London within an hour. So you kind of, the way I saw it as I got older was that you had the benefit of a great working week, no commuting or 20-minute commute. And then at the weekend, if you wanted to go away, you could be in London for the weekend, enjoying all it has to offer. But the Isle of Man has got so much to offer as well, in terms of, especially on nice summer days. We
have so many of those.
Yeah, and space. We've got space. And
we do, don't we?
People, it's easier to get outside and enjoy the countryside and that kind of thing.
Yeah, especially if they've come from somewhere like Jersey or Guernsey, where the biggest open space is the airfield.
Okay, I've not actually been to either, but I'm quite keen to visit.
Yeah. So what would you say that the main challenges are that the Isle of Man faces?
I think growing the working population and encouraging graduates back. I think that's really important. And I understand why people don't necessarily want to come back straight away. But I think even encouraging people as they move into their late 20s to come back, because they've then got a bit of experience, more graduate schemes, which I think I saw something yesterday that was announced.
Yeah, there is. It's up to £6,000 support for 20%, which is the maximum if that's 20% of someone's salary for the first year. And there's something to do with national insurance. I didn't fully read it, but it's there is something out right now. Partly answering that. I don't know if that goes anywhere near enough, but I mean, moving back, there's more.
So expensive as well. I think I was told, I've was told by someone that was doing the equivalent of what I was doing when I started at PDMS. And I was on a good salary then, but it wasn't particularly high as a graduate. But I think some people are still getting paid that now. Yeah. And it's just so challenging to get on the property ladder, even to rent. You can't find, I don't think, from what I've seen online, rent like an apartment for less than £650 a month. There are challenges for younger people, but I think that that's what the island really needs.
I agree. Yeah, thank you for that. Well, election coming up. Yeah. Chances to see manifestos and make decisions, I suppose. Did I see that you're part of Chamber of Commerce as well?
So I was on the fuel committee, which has now turned into the Chamber think tank.
Right, okay.
I actually left there when I started Startup Grind.
Oh, did you?
I had too many, and I was doing the Alman Business Network at that point as well. Yeah. So there was a lot going on, but I think they are doing, I saw a survey.
Yeah, I did. I answered the survey. Did you? Okay. You answered it?
No, not yet. I just saw the email a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it sounded a really good way to, for the benefit of our listeners, government chamber came around to all of the members, asking us for views on what we would like to see on candidate manifestos, and there's a chance for some really constructive feedback to be given. So I hope they take some note of it.
Yeah, I think it's really important to get the younger people voting as well. I think that that's a huge opportunity, really. Yeah. Because everyone sits and complains, but
yeah, it's easy to be negative, isn't it? Yeah. That's the whole point of this podcast, is to be constructive and So, what's planned next, Katie? What's the next exciting project that you've got?
Grow Founded, really, and to get that to a level where we're offering more services and we're working with more partners. So, looking at. We've already made some inroads in partnering with some companies in the Northwest who will allow us to kind of spread the island's message.
And is it going to be more online events or more in-person events?
So a bit of both. So we found that online really helped us in terms of us being able to spread that message and be able to get a wider audience. Also with investors at pitch events, a lot of the people on the Isle of Man are very private. So it's quite different to in the UK, where you'd walk into a room and there'd be 50 people openly saying, I'm an investor.
And you don't know anyone.
Yeah, so it's given us opportunity in that respect. So more events, broadening, Founded, and just trying to see what the new digital agency looks like and seeing how we come out of COVID really as an island and what opportunity that will bring.
Seems to be a new strategy that they've commissioned. Is it KPMG or PwC?
It's KPMG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see what they come out with. Yeah,
definitely.
Great. Okay, so you've given me a book. Unless there's another book you'd like to recommend as a source.
Another great book that I always find myself coming back to is Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In. She is the COO of Facebook. And it's probably 7 years old now, but she talks a lot about having a seat at the table and that imposter syndrome thing and women not raising their hand. And it's, her term, she always talks about people that go on maternity leave, and she always says, don't leave before you leave. So don't start putting yourself in that mindset of, I'm going to be taking time off. I won't accept that opportunity. And it's very, again, female focused, but very, for me, it's quite poignant. I think you see a lot of that type of thing in business, but definitely also changing now as well, especially on the Isle of Man. There's been some great key appointments at companies with female leads, again, quite young as well. So that's fantastic to see.
No, they just need to reflect that in their publicity. We see everything that goes out. It's like white man. Yeah. Token black guy running Invest. Yeah. Oh, yes, I did email my response. What's your favourite quote, Katie?
Probably one by Richard Branson, which is, if someone offers you an opportunity and you don't know if you can do it, say yes and figure it out after. Yeah. Which I think when I look back on all the things I've done work-wise, especially, that has kind of rung very true.
Paddy Power. That's a great story, by the way.
Yeah. And also even just Bridge, I knew nothing about angel investing or early stage companies at the start of when I joined KPMG. So yeah, that's one that I kind of
well done.
live by.
Great. That's a really good quote. So where can people go to learn more about you and what you're up to and your events and things like that? You've got websites, LinkedIn pages.
Yeah, so on LinkedIn or as Katie Nicholson, and also Startup Grind / Isle of Man. You can join the Isle of Man community there. And then founded.im is our website for Founded.
Brilliant. Just wanted to say thank you so much for coming and recording with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you, and I'm inspired by what I've heard. And
thanks so much.
You've got nothing to be have imposter syndrome about. Trust me, I think you're absolutely fabulous. So,
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Island Influencers from Thornton Chartered Financial Planners. To find out more and for useful links, visit thorntonfs.com/podcasts.